Meanwhile, the median time to get approval to build a house there is 627 days. That's 217 days longer than it took to build the Empire State Building.
Let me ask you something that should make you stop for a second. How does it take 627 days just to get approval to build a house in a state that constantly says it's facing a housing emergency? That's not construction. That's not weather delays or labor shortages. That's just waiting for permission. For perspective, the Empire State Building went from groundbreaking to completion in just 410 days. Nearly a century ago. No modern tech, no digital systems, no espresso on every corner. If that comparison doesn't set off alarm bells, it probably should. And that's exactly why Bill Maher has finally had enough. He's saying out loud what millions of Californians have been yelling for years. Before we go further, if you value commentary that doesn't dance around reality, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Is California choking on regulation, or is this somehow reasonable? Let's get into it. Maher isn't a conservative firebrand. He's been a reliable liberal voice for decades, which is why this moment matters. When someone like him says the system is broken, people pay attention. His first example was almost laughably simple. A garage door. Not a high-rise, not an oil rig, just a garage door. The result? 3 separate inspections, no miracle ending, just delays, paperwork, and fees.
Regulations that aren't necessary, that aren't, I mean, you really don't believe that the state we live in, California, is lacking regulation. There's over 300,000 regulations. I mean,
Well, maybe they're needed.
They're not. When I tried to put in a garage door, I had to have 3 inspections. There should have been none. I should be allowed to change my garage door.
Are you kidding? Really? It was about a garage door?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
If you live in California, none of this sounds shocking. It's normal. And here's what people outside the state often don't realize. California isn't just regulated, it's smothered. There are over 300,000 regulations on the books. That's not thoughtful governance. That's paralysis. Housing projects stall for years. Infrastructure plans get announced, funded, re-announced, refunded, and quietly abandoned. High-speed rail has turned into a punchline, and when wildfires hit, no one is escaping on a train that never showed up.
California is the place that spends money and gets nothing, which is why you may have noticed when the fires broke out, no one escaped by high-speed rail. We have the highest marginal tax rate in America, higher than almost all other states, and soon Greenland.
California has mastered one thing, spending enormous amounts of money while delivering very little. Maher doesn't sugarcoat it. This is a state that taxes like a European welfare system, but operates like a broken DMV. It has the highest marginal tax rate in the country, higher than almost every other state, and it keeps climbing. So what do residents get for it? Crumbling roads, rolling blackouts, and a housing market so warped that a backyard shed gets marketed as a starter home. Maher's deeper point cuts harder. This isn't random. It's the product of a one-party system. No competition means no urgency. This isn't about left versus right. It's accountability versus comfort. Look at swing states where one mistake can end a political career. In California, careers are practically guaranteed. When leaders know they can't lose, but they stop listening to voters and start catering to activists, donors, and bureaucrats. Competition forces action. Monopolies create stagnation. And California politics has become a monopoly. That's why costs explode and nothing improves. That's why regulations only grow. No one's job depends on fixing the problem. And that's when the conversation gets uncomfortable.
You know this about California.
No, I don't.
Well,
I'm sorry, I don't.
You don't? You've never heard that California is overtaxed and overregulated? That we are a one-party state where there's sort of no checks on that sort of extreme leftism. And that, what do you think?
I don't for a minute consider California a state that is extreme leftist. Not at all, not any way.
Well, that shows where your politics are. That's not where mine are. I'm sorry to tell.
Maher gets serious pushback when he's told, sincerely, that California isn't overtaxed, overregulated, or ideologically extreme. That's when the disconnect becomes impossible to ignore. Enter Jane Fonda. She's lived an extraordinary life, but she also lives in a world where regulation is abstract. Rising utility bills don't affect her. Housing costs aren't a concern at her income level. Permits, fees, taxes, those are background noise when you're worth tens of millions. For people like her, regulation is a moral badge. For everyone else, it's rent, gas, electricity, and whether starting a business is even realistic.
They don't really like them that much. They just think the far left has gone so nutty on so many issues.
That's what they're being told
That's what they,
by people like you.
because it's true.
Maher drives this point home when he explains why people voted for Trump. Not because Trump was perfect, not because voters loved his personality, but because he acknowledged their frustration. While elites lectured from behind gates, regular Americans were drowning in costs imposed by people who never felt them. That anger didn't come out of nowhere. It built slowly. One form, one fee, one permit at a time. Then Maher shifts to water, and the conversation gets almost surreal. California has lived with drought warnings for decades. Residents are told to shorten showers and let lawns die. At the same time, almond farming has doubled. Here's the reality. Oranges, tomatoes, strawberries use about 11 gallons of water per pound. Almonds use roughly 1,900 gallons per pound. One crop consumes more water than entire major cities combined.
We have spent the last 2 decades in perpetual drought here, yet almond farmers in California have doubled in that time. Despite the fact that almond production alone uses more water than all the humans and businesses in San Francisco and Los Angeles combined, even on days when your teenage son spends 2 hours showering. How much water it takes to grow different crops, oranges, tomatoes, strawberries, all take about 11 gallons to make 1 pound. Almonds, 1,900 gallons. That wasn't a problem back when it rained, but now there simply isn't enough water to go around, and we have to make a painful choice, getting it to the people or getting it in the...
So what's the response? Subsidies. Agriculture consumes about 80% of California's water, while contributing less than 2% to the state's economy. This isn't small family farms. It's corporate agriculture protected by policies written for another era. Maher's point is simple. Scarcity should drive prices. Instead, taxpayers subsidize massive consumption, while cities ration water and rural wells dry up. That's not environmental responsibility. That's policy failure. And the winners are always the same. Large corporations with lobbyists, bloated agencies that never shrink, and regulators who justify their existence by adding new layers of control.
California agriculture accounts for 80% of our water use, even though California agriculture is less than 2% of our economy. We actually have enough water. We just give way too much of it to farmers who get their water subsidized by the government because we still act like it's 1890 and farmers are small and independent when they're really mostly part of big ag. And corporations get what they want in them.
Which leads to one of the sharpest lines of the entire discussion. California's bureaucracy exists to make sure nothing happens, and then charge you for it. Permit offices, inspectors, zoning boards, review panels, consultants. Every step adds friction. Delay becomes the norm. Fees stack up. How may I slow you down? Might as well be the official greeting.
It's the vast network of regulators, administrators, inspectors, contract reviewers, project managers, fee assessors, special commissioners, zoning officers, and consultants whose jobs seem to be to make sure nothing ever happens and then charge you for it. The people who answer the phone, "Permit office, how may I hinder you?"
Then people act shocked when residents start leaving. This isn't theoretical anymore. Companies relocate, energy firms move out, tech workers cash out and head to states where productivity isn't treated like a crime. And it's not just corporations. Families, retirees, young professionals realize they're working harder every year for less in return. Maher calls it economic self-sabotage. When success is punished, people don't revolt, they relocate. Then the focus shifts to cities and leadership. Rahm Emanuel adds a blunt reality check. Mayors aren't failing because problems are impossible. They're failing because priorities are upside down. Public safety, education, fiscal stability, that's the job.
I read that the current mayor of Chicago has an approval rating of 6.6%.
Round it up, Sep.
So, okay. But I mean, you were just the ambassador to Japan. If that was your approval rating in Japan, they would do harakiri on live TV.
They would do it at 27.
I mean, what's going on in Chicago as the person?
Look, I mean, we were talking about this a little earlier. I mean, you have also the mayor of New York not doing well. Obviously, other things also here in Los Angeles not doing well, the mayor here. Look, and then you got mayors like the mayor of San Francisco and other cities that are doing well. So I would say, look, there is a general rule. I had this when I was mayor. Safe streets, strong schools, stable finances. Focus on those three things and your city's gonna be.
Instead, leaders fixate on symbolic fights while crime rises and basic necessities get locked behind glass. When drugstores look like bank vaults, something has gone very wrong. And schools? This might be the most alarming part. 8th grade reading scores are at their lowest point in 30 years. 30. And what dominates the debate? Bathrooms, pronouns, culture wars. Parents don't send kids to school to be political experiments. They send them to learn. When classrooms turn into ideological battlegrounds, education loses. While leaders chase optics, outcomes collapse. No slogan fixes that.
We've gone through 5 years where people became way too permissive of culture. They were all, which is why everything's locked up at Walgreens and CVS, and that is a disaster.
Yeah.
And our school, and I'll say this about our schools. I don't want to hear another word about the locker room. I don't want to hear another word about the bathroom. You better start focusing on the classroom.
Yeah.
I agree. We had the worst reading scores for 8th graders in 30 years. And nobody, not a governor, not a mayor, not a president, not a secretary of education is talking about it. We're all wrapped up. Look, in 7th grade, if I known that I could have said the word they and got in the girls' bathroom, I would have done it.
By the end, the picture is clear. California isn't failing because it lacks compassion. It's failing because it lacks limits. It lacks competition. It lacks leaders willing to say no to bad ideas and powerful interests. Maher isn't calling for an uprising. He's calling for basics. Build housing faster. Price water honestly. Focus on safety and education. Stop pretending regulation is virtuous when it clearly isn't working. California used to be where opportunity lived. Now it's where people escape from, and that should worry everyone. If this made you think, hit like. If you're tired of politics that ignore reality, subscribe and drop a comment. Is California fixable, or has failure simply become too comfortable?